Okay.
Well, hey, everybody, it is Lisa with It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. You know, we believe that every mom can confidently, competently, and even contentedly provide complete high school education for their teens' needs and elementary and middle school. And part of the reason we do this podcast is to bring you people from around the world who have created amazing products for you to homeschool. It's not that hard, really. And so I'm here today with John Connor of Breaking the Barrier, and he is a foreign language expert. And I'm so excited to have you on the show, John. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, we are going to talk about breaking the barrier. You have several products. You have breaking the Spanish barrier, breaking the French barrier. What other ones?
Well, we've just come out with a beginning level of breaking the English barrier for Spanish speakers.
Awesome.
So we're putting our feet in the water in that area.
So,
So
wow, that's exciting news. I would love to give our listeners a good idea of how you got started. You started sharing a little bit, but we decided it was too good. We needed to record it. So tell us how you got started in the foreign language world, because it's a unique place.
it sure is. It actually goes back to sixth grade when I grew up in Chicago, Evanston, Illinois, and my dad was a Methodist minister, in fact, and my Sunday school teacher happened to teach Spanish at the local junior high school. When I discovered that, I switched my sign up from French to Spanish, and I would say the rest is history. I fell in love with the language. I studied it through high school, college, then I went to graduate school in the Midwest in University of Wisconsin, and decided I would make my life mission to teach Spanish. And then, like many people who teach, many people who are passionate about learning, I had strong ideas about how language is best learned. And I looked through so many materials and things that made me cross out books where font is too small, too much emphasis on fill in the whatever it is. I felt the fastest way to fluency is good vocabulary, understand the basics of grammar. It's very, very important to understand how a language is put together, and then tons of opportunities for kids to get confident, to do exercises where they realize, wow, I can do this. And I wanted to have materials that could be used at home by kids that may not have a parent that's a native speaker. So we have in our program right now both print books, and we have an online companion for that, where there's videos, where there's every sentence is recorded by a native speaker. There's a lot of interactive exercises I can tell you about, but my goal was anyone can learn a language, but give them what they need. And you know, I have 4 children who all learn Spanish, and they all use my materials, and believe me, they were honest. They go, Dad, not bad, but
Yeah,
you should do this. And fortunately, every year I'm able to update the books, and we feel the 2023 printing of the books is going to be the best ever.
that's
So,
awesome. I love it. There is no better critic than your own family, right? Because they
oh
love
my,
you enough to tell you the honest truth.
that is totally true. And one thing that sets our approach apart is we like to have sentences that reflect things going on in the world, whether if there's a new head of state in a Spanish-speaking country. I remember when there was a new Supreme Court justice in the United States, the first Latina on the Supreme Court, we put her name in there. When the first Latino was named Pope from South America, Argentina, his name would go in. And so the sentences are very rich culturally. But when I first wrote the book, I put in like famous songs that were popular when I was 12 or 13, like Sonny and Cher and the Monkees. And my kids go, Dad,
Who
this
are
is
these people?
embarrassing. So we're a little bit more up to date. But anyway.
I love it. I love it. There is so much importance in understanding a culture while you're learning the language. I taught Latin for a few years, and I still joke with some of my students from way back, like the parts of the Gauls are floating down the river. Like, okay, so it's a military culture, but come on, they did other things besides just chop up their enemies, right? And so I think, I mean, it's humorous, but really, we've all had those language classes where it's like, how do you order a hamburger at a restaurant? Well, you're doing way more than ordering hamburgers at restaurants if
Right.
you are participating in a wider culture.
Absolutely. And the great reward is a student learns enough language to be able to read a beautiful little poem, or to be able to read a short story, or to see a film and maybe it has subtitles at the beginning. But the reward for studying a language is being able to appreciate the culture through literature and art and movies, and also through people that may live in your neighborhood or people
Right.
that you can speak to over the telephone. But unless you want to speak in infinitives like hablar, comer, and you point, and
Yeah.
some teachers go, wow, you're communicating. No, with our approach, you're going to learn how to conjugate the verbs, have a rich vocabulary so it's meaningful.
Yeah.
And the kids will go, I can do this. And once you get to read short stories that were written in Central America or in Spain, and in every chapter, we start off with a map of the country, heads of state, famous people, famous foods that are eaten there. And there's
Yeah.
all that information there just to whet your appetite
I love it.
while you're simultaneously memorizing great vocab and grammar.
Yeah, that is so exciting. I love it. You mentioned you really try to give the kids a solid vocabulary to work with, as well as grammar. And I think that's so important. For those of us who don't remember what an infinitive is,
Yes.
remind us really quickly.
Yeah, an infinitive is it's like the base form of a verb
Yeah.
before it gets associated with the person. So if I say, for example, to drink, it's not associated with any person. Once I enter the picture, I drink, she drinks, we conjugate it.
Yeah.
And in Spanish, of course, the conjugations are a little bit more rich than in English. English conjugations are much easier.
Yeah.
But right from the beginning in our program, in the first year, kids will learn how to speak in the present tense and in the past tense, both with the preterite and imperfect. In some programs, I'm sorry to say, have the poor kids spent a whole year in the present.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of high school kids, that's torture.
Yeah.
They want to talk about what they ate last night. They want to talk
Right.
about what sports team won last week.
Yeah.
So we feel in the first year, kids are able to do that, and they do it successfully.
That's awesome. I love what you said too. You give the kids plenty of opportunities to be successful. And I love that because I just know when I just thought growing up, I didn't have the grammar gene or I didn't have the foreign language gene. And I didn't realize, probably because of, a lot of things, but I didn't realize that they're skills. And a lot of learning a foreign language is just simply work. And if you know how to work academically, if you have skills, study skills, you can absolutely learn a foreign language successfully. And I
Yes.
love that you're saying you give the kids the tools that they need to
Yes.
succeed.
And part of me is a very old-fashioned learner where I always believe in the print book. And our program for homeschool, we provide both a print book and the online access. The print book, you can take notes, you can circle things, the font is nice and big. However, the online has one of the most ingenious, I think, aspects to it, which is if a child is doing an exercise and types in an answer, it will immediately turn green if it's correct. It'll immediately turn red if it's not correct. And my favorite, say you're just missing an accent mark, it'll turn yellow. So I want the kids to feel like, oh, I'm close. And rather than wait to do a whole page and then look up the answers, or even worse, in a traditional school setting, you do your homework, and the next day or after the weekend, you'll go in. When you learned a language at home with your mom or dad, you'd pick up something, like maybe you don't know the word tissue.
Yeah.
And you go, what is this? Mom wouldn't say guess, and I'll tell you in 2 days. She'd say right away, tissue.
Right.
And so the immediate feedback is part of the tools that we feel helps kids with the Breaking the Barrier program soar.
I love that. I do love it because that is how a living language is. You're talking, and even if you're just joking around, or my daughters travel a little bit and people go, oh no, that's not the right word, it's this. Like, people automatically correct each other when we're speaking, right? That's
Exactly.
it's an organic way of learning a language.
Right. And that is one thing to embrace with technology. It does give the opportunity not only to see if your answers are right or wrong. Every single sentence in our book, we have native speakers from around the world saying that sentence. You click on the sentence and you hear it. And eventually, language is instincts. Something sounds right to you. You don't have to kind of think, okay, this is in the past tense. You know the word comi means I ate. just because you've heard it a lot. So that's another thing with digital, you get the sound reinforcing what you see on the written page.
Right. I think that's so important because I think traditionally, I know I learned by just filling in a textbook, but
Yeah,
really having a couple kids who've really embraced, and my husband too, foreign languages, and they're able to interact and speak with people, they can hear it and they can
exactly.
speak it. It's not just filling in a workbook. And I think that's so important. Like as we enter this global age, our kids are going to be working and living in a global gig economy. They have to be competitive. If they understand a foreign language, they're that much more competitive. They have to be able to hear it, even if they don't understand the whole thing, at least have some idea of what other languages are about, and cultures too. It's so important.
Exactly. It's a key for opening up your eyes and your heart and your soul to the world. And
Yeah,
it puts you on the place of people that have moved from one place to another. And when you don't know the language, you're most vulnerable. And
right,
I like that our kids that study Spanish with me, when I'm sitting next to them at the beginning, they don't know any sound. They don't and it's so satisfying. Little by little, they embrace it. And when they can do it, it's so amazing. And
right.
it gives them empathy with other people throughout the world who've gone through that. And I just think it's actually one of the secrets now in 2023 of making the world better, of
Yeah.
having people embrace language, embrace other cultures, because you love, at the end, what you have yourself more, and you love the people with you.
Yeah, that's so true. Language really, when you break the language barrier, you have broken a fear factor, right? Because if you can communicate, then you can understand, like, why are you so angry? No, you're afraid, or whatever. Why are you laughing? That's really inappropriate. Oh my gosh, it means this totally different thing over here. It just opens up so much. I love how you said it. It just opens you up to love and honestly, some really great jokes.
Well, that's true. No, that is true. In language, and when you get to the point where you can laugh at language or word plays,
Yeah,
and I don't know, anytime I'm with a student and they make a mistake,
yeah.
you know, learning mistake is part of learning. And
Yes.
and when you feel fine about that, and I have all these stories about things I've said, and I go, wow, I think back to that, but you're on the pathway forward. And
Right.
the idea of breaking a barrier, I think it's a great image, because for a lot of people, there's a barrier here, and some people think it's impossible. But I believe anyone can learn a language, and you chip away at it, and eventually, like, whoa,
Yeah.
I've broken through. I'm here. I'm ready.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody today about one of the things that our kids are really a soft skill, interpersonal skill that our kids are going to have, and that is adaptability and flexibility. And personally, I think helping your kids understand communication and really learning a foreign language is one of the best ways to do that because, again, it deals with culture and it deals with the heart of a community, the heart of people. And if you can learn to communicate in a different place than where you are from, you've automatically learned those soft skills and interpersonal skills. Would
I
you agree with
totally
that?
agree. I agree with that completely. And
Yeah.
the way our program is set up, we have a 3-year program starting from a beginner, assuming you know nothing at all, or maybe you know a little bit. And then we present, as I said, the key vocabulary for a beginner,
Yeah.
the grammar of the present and the past,
Yeah.
and then things like adjectives and adverbs and all the rich cultural things.
Yeah.
And then when you go into the second year, I always assume over the summer kids have forgotten everything. Like, that's just kind of natural. So
Yeah.
we'll review for 3 chapters what you learned last year, and
Yeah.
then you go into the future tense and perfect tenses like I have studied or I
Yeah.
had eaten, um, conditional. And then by the time you get to the last year, it's the rest of the tenses, subjunctive. But by the end, we feel that's all the grammar you need. And we don't race through it. On the other hand, we don't go at a glacier pace where kids after a year think, well, I can talk about the weather and I know the numbers 1 to 10. That's great. But once you know more, it's more fun. It's
It's more
way more
fun.
fun.
Right. Right. Right.
Exactly. It's like
And
if
you
you're gonna go
can,
swimming. If you're
yeah,
gonna go
let's be,
swimming,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, if you go swimming, you want to, within a year, get all the way in the water. You don't want to, the first day we'll put in your toe, come back next week, we'll,
Right.
of course, we're not gonna have you you're going to be able to swim before you get in the deep end. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I do think, I talk about the Goldilocks principle a lot, and the Goldilocks principle educationally is not too hard, not too easy, but just right, which is a few steps beyond comfortable for most kids. And I think what we don't realize as homeschoolers is we want our kids to get mastery. We want to make it accessible to them. We want to understand their learning styles and make it so personalized, which is great. But we sometimes lose challenge in that, and kids do want challenge, right? Their brains are just made to want a challenge.
Exactly. And I really think it's some parents, I think, and teachers feel they're doing a service to the kid. Let's go slow. And you don't want to have kids feel overwhelmed, but the beauty of our program, it's very step by step, and you learn a little, you build on it, you build on it, you build on it. And built into each chapter, at the end of each chapter, we have what we call a prueba de repaso, review quiz, which is a homework assignment, but it's as if it's a little test.
Yes.
We also, in our homeschool packages, have a testing program. But my goal always is to set kids up to do great.
That's
like
awesome.
I would like to have every kid in the 90s. And I think I hated when I was a student to come to test day and the format was something new because my teacher felt like you need to be challenged. Well, no, I put in the time. I know my stuff. Let me show you that.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, when you get into literature, you can be more creative, but learn the words, learn the conjugations, and let me feel I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. Writing a textbook is a daunting task, and you've written not just one or two, but a couple.
Yeah.
How on earth did you decide to write a textbook for Spanish and then other languages?
Yeah. Well, it was back in the late 90s. And, when you want to teach kids a language, you need your hands on a textbook. And I hadn't written a textbook, but I had my hands on a lot of books, and I had gone to graduate school, as I mentioned, the University of Wisconsin, and I had these amazing teachers, and one of them I had heard had written a beginning textbook. And so I ordered the book, and I didn't see my professor's name on the cover of the book, which I thought was strange. I saw the big name of the publishing company. And later on, I saw this professor at a conference that said, "Professor, I bought your book." And between you and me, it wasn't my favorite book, but I said, "Whoa, I was so excited to get your book, but I couldn't really find your name." And he smiled. He goes, "I got to tell you a secret. This book was written by 10 people. It was a committee. I wrote one chapter." And honestly, I was so relieved because it didn't feel like there was the voice of somebody sitting next to you, like a mom or dad at home or a trusted neighbor. And when I heard that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to write my own book. It's going to be my voice. And you've seen Breaking the Barrier. It's as if I'm sitting next to a kid going, "All right, do you know what an adverb is? In case you forgot, here's what it does. An adverb describes an adjective." And it's just that conversational. And so a book came out in 1997, and I, sent it around to a few friends, and almost immediately there were some high schools that wanted to use it. There were homeschool families that wanted to use it. And I mean, that was almost 25 years ago. I would say in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years in particular, I think with the pandemic, when there's more people looking for really good, authentic resources at home, we have been so blessed that the interest in our product has gone up exponentially. And it's very, very gratifying. But it was like a lot of teachers, I thought, you know what? I think I could do this better. And it's a leap of faith. And when I wrote the advanced Spanish book first, I decided I'll start there. And then I heard back, well, where's the beginner book? And it took me about a year and a half to write each level. And then we did the intermediate. And then there were French teachers that were friends of Spanish speakers say, "Where's the French book?" And then I had some very dear friends from Belgium and France, and I was the editor. And so, and the book started off, just with the print book, which was beautiful. And after very reluctantly embracing the technological world, I came to learn how valuable it is to have audio, to have, interactive sentences. We have these flashcards that are so fun. It's very old fashioned. An English word will be here. You guess the Spanish. Or you can have the Spanish word here, guess the English. And my favorite is we have a flashcard just with a picture.
Yeah.
And the kids do it. And if they know, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
we use the best of technology with, I think, very old fashioned educational theory. So,
Yeah, I love it. That's why I say over at True North is that we use time-tested pedagogy with cutting-edge tech. And
oh,
it's just such a great time to be an educator because, yeah, if you have a great educational pedagogy, couple that with technology, oh, the sky's the limit.
wow.
Yeah.
I wish I had come up with that phrase. I think that's exactly how I
Yeah.
feel as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
I really love your program. We looked around for quite a few years to find a good high school foreign language program for Spanish in particular. And honestly, it was harder than I thought it would be. And one of the things too I hear all the time, and I love Rosetta Stone. I love Duolingo. We've used them a lot in our homeschool when our kids were little, but I hear people all the time saying, I'm using it for high school credit, which I do a whole thing on credits and transcripts, and I have my own opinions. But I feel like personally, they're overview programs. They don't get into the weeds of a foreign language. Would you
yeah.
be open to just speaking about that a little bit? Like when are those programs useful? And when do families need to find something a little bit more robust, like breaking the Spanish barrier?
Well, first of all, there are many roads that lead to Rome. And, there's a lot, or to Madrid or to Mexico City or wherever.
Right.
So anyone who has a passion for learning a language and wants to teach it, they will teach in the way that their heart best feels a person learns a language. Programs like Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, I think they do a great job in that they advertise with a lot of resources to say, you can learn a language. And when I hear that, I love that. Let people get in the door.
Yeah.
But my personal experience is language is eventually best learned and appreciated when it's not just repeating sounds or seeing pictures and cute animation. And there's nothing against that.
Right.
However, when you have an approach like ours, which is so clear with what we want to do, by the end of this 1 year period,
Yeah.
this is what you will have learned. It'll be a very methodical approach. Along the way, there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of sound, but it's thought through. And I've been teaching now, I won't say how many decades, but a number of decades. And kids I've worked with, families I've worked with, we've listened to what they think could be better. But at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves. Kids embrace the language, they can do it. So anyone who's teaching a language, I love, and I won't say a bad word about any approach. However, I am very bullish on what we do, and it's been very embraced. It's a little bit in the Bible like David and Goliath. We're a little bit of a David in the world of multi-million-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And I'm not against them, as I say, they're saying learn a language, but I think the folks that have found us have become true believers, and it's very heartening.
Yeah.
So
Well, I love the fact that you're teaching grammar with the vocabulary because I feel like every culture has its own grammar and it is really tied to the culture in many ways. And when you understand grammar, you understand thought processes, and that helps you embrace the people and the whole point of the language. It just makes such a difference.
Exactly. I mean, a great example about how grammar reflects culture. In English, say, I don't know, say I'm playing baseball outside and the ball goes through the neighbor's window.
Mhm.
Now, in English, I would say, I would knock on the neighbor's door and I would say, I'm so sorry I broke the window, which is very nice. And the neighbor would say, fine. In Spanish language, if you say rompí la ventana, I broke the window, it's as if you intentionally did it. And the construction in Spanish is se me rompió la ventana. The window broke itself on me. It was an accident. It's almost as if the universe conspired. I purposely didn't do that. And it's very profound, that grammatical thought. And there's, as I work with kids, I point out those things. There's subtle things sometimes, but it makes you think there's a lot of knowledge in different civilizations that's reflected in the language. And it's when you see that, my kids always think that example is very cool.
Yeah.
And when they come in, if a kid's coming to an appointment to me and they're late, if they say something or they don't have their homework, say,
Yeah.
if they say, oh, olvidé la tarea, I forgot the homework, as if they intentionally did it. And I go, you purposely forgot it? And they go,
Yeah.
oh no, se me olvidó. It forgot itself on me.
Oh,
Little things like that.
yeah,
So
that's very fascinating. I love that. And I love the cultural aspect of what I mean, you have maps, you have, like you said, you have up-to-date information about political leaders and famous people from the cultures. That is so fantastic.
yeah,
I like,
yeah.
tell us more. Why did you add that? Was that like something you
Oh
think was so important or?
no, I mean, the rich reward of learning a new language is you enter in the world of people that have different recipes than you use, that have different money, that have different famous people, that have different art. And I want at the very first page of every chapter, and in the digital, it's very nice because we can use color, and so there's color maps and pictures of famous people from those countries. We have lists of the resources, the best tourist places to go, and it whets people's appetites. And students at home, homeschoolers, sometimes will pick a topic at the beginning of a chapter to do a little report. And homeschool cooperatives, kids will each pick something. And so it's intentionally at the beginning, yet what we do is give you the grammar, the vocabulary to be able to learn more about those in the target language. But it's not by accident that that's front row center. And we hope the kids will say, whoa, look at these pictures of Panama. Yeah. I'd love to go there someday. And we have beautiful color pictures. And I don't know, I'm getting excited about
I love
I
it.
hope I'm
I love
not
it.
too excited, but
How many places have you visited? How much traveling have
yeah,
you done?
well, I lived for a year in Europe right when I was out of college. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do right then. I thought I might want to be a lawyer, but then Spanish called me. So I mean, I saw like 18 countries in Europe, but I lived in Spain for 6 months. And then in South America, I've been to Colombia a lot. I've been to Peru. I've been to Ecuador. I've been to, I mean, in Central America, Panama, Mexico. There's a lot of countries on my list, however, and there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time, but I think Costa Rica's next for me. I've just heard it's so beautiful, and I haven't been.
My sister went there in college. I went to Puerto Rico. She went to Costa Rica. And
Oh,
I mean, I feel like Puerto Rico is just, oh, it's one of my favorite
yeah,
places. Like I just
I've been
love
there.
it.
I love Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful,
so
beautiful.
beautiful. So I got this question at a convention this spring. People were saying they wanted to send their kids to like Mexico for a month or to do an immersion experience, but they feel really tentative because of how the world has changed so much since 2020. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts about that? Being an international traveler and being a dad?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think in any generation, and my mom, I'm dad, I remember distinctly when I announced to them, I'm going with one of my best friends to Europe. We bought that. I said, I'd like to do this. I bought a backpack, and they were like, oh my gosh. And part of it's the unknown, and
Yeah,
part of it you have to plan well.
yeah,
I think the best, I mean, at that point I was out of college. When kids are in high school, I think you need to find a program where part of it is you're with families, where that's your base. And I'm all in favor of doing a little sightseeing around, but there's programs that I think are very good in Spanish speaking countries where you live with a family for a few weeks. And for me, it's gold after studying a bit of Spanish, and you go and like, whoa, mom, they understood me. And I asked for bread, and that is just worth everything. And I'm not as big a fan of going with a group of high school kids, like on a sightseeing tour where the kids are all going to speak in English, basically.
yeah,
So I think family with an established organization, and there's some great ones. I mean, I don't want to name names
yeah.
necessarily. I can say privately, but there's some that I've recommended that kids have liked. But I strongly recommend to have ones where there's families that they know,
Yeah.
and that gives you your base.
Right. I love what you said. In every generation, there's always something to be concerned about. I mean,
Yeah.
so
No,
that's gonna change. That's consistent.
that's that is true. That is true. And I mean, back when I went, my parents only heard from me when I'd write a letter and it would go, and then I would give them a post office box where I'd be going, and I'd be so excited. And now at least you can stay in touch with your children,
Yeah.
through the internet. And that actually is, I think, peace of mind
Yeah.
in most ways. I mean,
You
in
can have
some ways, I think,
that phone tracker, right?
right.
You can-
I think that's important. I think that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So,
Um, well, it's just always something, right? But I do think teaching our kids an international language and allowing them to travel and experience the world and go taste the food and go meet the people,
yeah,
because I think when we watch, especially mainstream news, it's so easy to become afraid, like everybody else is out to get us. And the reality is most people are just normal people. They want to raise their kids, they want to be able to go get the things
right.
they need and live a decent life. So there's so much decency in the world. And when we can just interact, we realize that.
I totally, totally agree. And you go to a place, even if your introduction is you smile at the person, and and then if you say a few words like buenos dias, good morning, like you're making a gesture to enter into their world. And I
Yeah.
I don't
It's
know,
a
I'm kind of,
beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
so, and then you can go to places like over my shoulder here. This is a architectural model of part of the Alhambra. And so I've been to the south of Spain and seen this beautiful architecture, and my world has just gotten so much richer being able to travel. And when I work with kids and work with families, that's the reward. And some people can't leave the country, but you can get into another country by opening a book, seeing a
Yeah.
movie, and start there. And maybe someday you'll be lucky enough to get on a plane or a boat.
Yeah.
So, and
I
you'll
know.
be ready. You'll be
Yeah.
ready for it.
Well, I love your program. I think it's a great resource for homeschool families, especially it's affordable. You give a lot of different ways for kids to take in information, both by writing, by hearing, by seeing, and it's robust. And really, the kids can work through it. They don't have to have a native speaker in their home, and I love that.
Yeah,
So
no, I really think that helps a lot. And at the end of every chapter, there's a special exercise which I love, where we have a native speaker who's recorded 14 questions
mm,
using vocabulary and grammar from the chapter, and the native speaker will read that, and then your child can hit the pause button and come up with an answer. And then you hit the button again, and you hear another native speaker giving a sample answer.
yeah,
And for visual learners, then you click a button, you can read what that other native speaker said. And we recommend the kids do that particular exercise 2, 3, 4 times. So eventually they feel very confident answering the
yeah,
question themselves.
yes.
So, if you had a native speaker living in your home, that person could do it with you. But there's so many resources we give that kids can
Make it
explore.
doable.
It make it
I
doable, exactly.
I want to talk about that for just a second because you brought up something I think is so important. So the kids actually get to hear a native speaker giving a canned answer. And the deal is if they memorize it, they have learned something so important. You hear all this rhetoric like memory is just you can Google
Oh,
anything, or my kids had to memorize in public school and it doesn't mean anything. Memory is the mother of learning. And that's an ancient saying. And I think it's so important. Like you're teaching, and you do have scripts and stuff in the program too, which I think is
right. You
important.
know what? I
Yeah,
am so glad you just said that.
yeah,
When I was learning Spanish in junior high school in Evanston, Illinois, my brother was studying French, and he would come home to the kitchen table, and he would recite these dialogues that his evil French teacher had made him memorize. And I remember one of the lines was "Pauvre petit vous n'avez pas de chance vraiment," which means roughly, "You poor little one, you have no luck." Just because his French teacher required him to memorize that. I've had that line my whole life. When I play sports with my brothers and he'd swing and miss in a tennis overhead, I go, "Ah, pauvre petit bonhomme, pas de chance." Memory work is key. It separates a human from other forms of life.
yeah.
And for some reason, it got a bad name, memory work, like you're
I
being too
know.
controlling. No.
Yeah.
Uh, we have
You're
dialogue.
singing my song. You are singing my song.
Well, we could do a
Yeah.
duet.
Yeah, yeah, because if you don't, everybody has so much memorized. I mean, My son broke his ankle. We paid the orthopedic surgeon a lot of money because he didn't cut open his ankle and go, let me Google where the ligaments are. Like he had it memorized. And all of us who are in any kind
Yeah,
of a job, my son-in-law, he paints cars. A car can go down the street and he can say the paint number. Like we all have
yeah,
so much memorized, we don't realize how valuable and important it is. But in a
absolutely.
language program, you
It's
have to memorize. We've all memorized thousands of words of vocabulary. It is key to success. And I love how you bake that into your program. That's one of
yeah,
the things I love about your program.
yeah, and say, I don't know, at least in the East Coast, we have something called Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you go into a donut store and you want a strawberry donut, if you have the word memorized in Spanish, you can say that word. If you don't, you can act it out. You can, I mean,
Yeah.
memory work is crucial.
Yeah.
And so what you said, I agree, in any profession, and we celebrate, and the flashcards are a great chance to
Yeah.
memorize work.
Yeah.
That groups of two thing, that the dialogue,
Yeah.
exactly. You hear an answer, you memorize it, it's with you. When
Yeah.
some of you ask that question, your brain has recorded that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's so important. Like I said, you really have it baked into the program in a fun and engaging way. And you use a lot of neural pathways. So it's not, your program isn't just for those kids who like to take notes or just those auditory kids. It's for every type of learner. And
right.
the more neural pathways you can use while you learn, the more you'll memorize, the more quickly, the more you'll make connections, all those great things. So
Yeah.
it's a great program.
Well, you're nice to say that. I think you and I would have fun teaching a class together.
Yeah.
We're definitely kindred spirits.
Yeah, absolutely. John, what do you want to leave the listeners with about foreign language or your program? Like what's the, what do you want them to just know about your program and foreign language learning?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, there's kind of no greater gift that you can give somebody than the gift of language. And of course, I'm a native English speaker. And the fact that I can use English words, I'm not only expressing thoughts, but I'm expressing emotions and things deep in my soul.
Mhm.
And when you're able to do that in more than one language, first of all, you get new words to describe things that English doesn't maybe do a great job with, that Spanish does even better, or French does even better. And you reach all of a sudden millions of more people. And I think the secret in 2023 is embracing all the great knowledge around the world, and all the great writers didn't only write in English. There's a lot of amazing writers in English, but other languages have given us artists and musicians and writers. And so that's the bottom line. I feel I found the best profession possible. It's funny. My mom was taught second grade. My dad was a minister. Both my brothers became ministers in churches, but I kind of followed my mother's pathway to, like, I kind of feel like my classroom is my, I don't know, my special sacred place, let's put it that way. Or when I'm sitting with the homeschool kid, it's a classroom of two. And if I'm not there, they have my books, they have my words, and I have a charmed life.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you're
that's
wonderful to let me share that.
well, thanks for being on the podcast, you guys. It's not that hard to homeschool. It really isn't that hard. And programs like Breaking the Barrier make it that much easier. So, John, I appreciate the hard work and heart you've put behind your program because it's really reflected. It's a great program. We'll put links in the bio and on the show notes so that you can find the program easily. Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it, John.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day and great rest of the week.
Thanks. Okay, you guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.